This conference will now be recorded.
Mr. Matt Malozzi, Mr. Tom Barker, Ms. Joy Cohen, and Mr. Eddie Burgos. We ask that anyone here in attendance silence their phones at this time due to the pandemic, which, as we hope, continues to improve each day. We are in a virtual mode still, and we are following all safety protocols. As we proceed through the meeting, anyone who is online that will be participating, when it is your opportunity for public comment, we ask that you say your name, give your address for the record so we know who is speaking. Planning Commission members as well, prior to, and I will try to manage that as well. If you can give your name prior to any comments you make, that will be appreciated. We ask everyone, please mute yourself. Our technology aide here today, Rick, will keep an eye on the chat room. And when we do have public comment, we will be able to unmute and speak at that time. We will proceed through today's agenda as listed. We have a very full agenda. The Planning Commission members will have an opportunity to direct questions related to any of the presenters here today, whether it's a project or a blighted property or what have you, whatever is listed. Following Planning Commission discussion, interested parties will then have an opportunity to make a comment. All interested parties will be asked to give their name, as I said, and address. We will adhere to a 5-minute time limit. We ask that all comments be related to the project proposal under review, and that all comments be concise, and please try to avoid repeating previously made assertions. After all interested parties have had an opportunity to speak, Planning Commission members will have one final chance to deliberate until any action or decision is made. All decisions are based on the provisions of the subdivision and land development ordinance, the zoning ordinance, and other municipal ordinances as applicable. Decisions will be based on these applicable ordinances, the recommendation of the city staff, pertinent public comment, and the public good. We will start with our first agenda item, approval of the April 8th, 2021 minutes. And I have a motion to approve. Mr. Malozzi.
Clarification, if I may. I believe I recused myself from one of the items on that, but I don't believe that I abstained from the vote. I think that was a 5-0 vote.
Mr. Malozzi, do you remember which one that is?
Yes, it was an application for actually a map amendment, zoning map amendment for 1843 West Broad and 1852 West Market. That one I recused myself from that specific and brought that up at the meeting to have it noted, duly noted, but did vote for the passage of the minutes. It was a 5-0 vote, I believe.
All right.
If we can have that, Mr. Malozzi's recusing himself, have that be reflected. I assume that is.
So we approved the minutes, you're saying, but
Yes.
not anything to do with that agenda item.
The agenda item, I noted the recusal that should be there and then did not abstain from the vote.
On the minutes.
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, that was prior.
That was last time. That was last month.
That's okay.
The March 11th minutes?
It's number one. I understand what he's saying. It does say on mine, 401, Mr. Malozzi abstained.
Yes, that's what I'm.
Under the approval of minutes,
Correct, right at the top.
correct.
That's okay.
I didn't though.
Did you were at the April meeting, right?
Correct.
And you,
Correct. I
oh, you're right.
yes, that's
See what you mean.
exactly.
Thank you.
We have that correction, Ms. Heller.
And then here. Didn't you abstain from these?
No,
Okay.
no,
Voted on these
Okay. Next.
yeah,
under Barod?
That was different.
this was last meeting.
Oh, okay.
That
All
one
right,
was
all
the
right.
month before.
All right,
That
excuse
makes
me.
sense. So noted. We have a motion. I will make a motion to approve the April 8th, 2021 minutes with that clarification on number one, the approval of minutes for the March 11th meeting as noted by Mr. Malozzi. Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Barker. Mr. Zario, roll please.
Mr. Malowski,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi,
Yes.
Mr. Burgos,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you. Our next agenda item, we have 4 vacant property reviews. And I would ask, gentlemen, please introduce yourself, give your name, and you may begin.
Mike Simonson, I'm with the Code Enforcement Department. My address is 10 East Church Street.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson.
Just for my knowledge, would the board rather than me go through all 4 of these properties at once, or would you rather me do it individually?
If you can do each individually, that would
Okay.
be fine.
All right. I'll start with 215 Hobart Street. 215 Hobart Street. The owner name is Kevin Kahn. His mailing address is there. The notice of this hearing was sent to him on 4/29. The first notice of violation was sent to him on 4/6 of 2021. Per section 304.1.1 of the 2009 International Property Maintenance Code, subsection 12, there are signs of structural deterioration of the stairs and porch that does not allow for safely supporting nominal loads and load efforts. And sections 108.1.3 of the 2009 International Property Maintenance Code, which requires essential equipment and utilities to be in good working order. Section 108.1.57 applies because the building is unsecure and provides for an attractive nuisance. Section 302.1 requires that the property be maintained in a clean, safe, and sanitary condition. These defects meet 1712.1C 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the PA Urban Redevelopment Law. On the next page of my presentation is the PA redevelopment law. And you can see the sections that I referenced there. And then following that, so any premise, at section 1, any premise which because of physical condition or use is regarded as a public nuisance at common law or has been declared a public nuisance in accordance with the local housing or building codes. Any dwelling which, because it is dilapidated, unsanitary, unsafe, vermin infested, or lacking in the facilities and equipment required by the housing code of the municipality has been designated by the department responsible for enforcement of the code as unfit for human habitation. Any subject which is a fire hazard or is otherwise dangerous to safety or persons or property. Any structure from which the utilities, plumbing, heating, sewerage, or any other facilities have been disconnected, destroyed, removed, or rendered ineffective so that the property is unfit for its intended use. So as you can see through the, I'll go through the pictures here quick that I have attached, if the board can see them, if they have the presentation in front of them. If not, they're on the screen.
We have it on our screen as
Okay.
well, Mr. Simon.
As you can see the deterioration of the structure. The first picture I have on there is it appears to be almost like a garage door, car door. You can see the vines growing up. The property's been for sale for a long time. You can see the rotting wood. I just put a for sale, the for sale sign up on the second picture and a closer picture of the wood. If you go to the third page, you can see where the structure is actually deteriorating. The back stairs, you can see broken pieces of wood, deterioration in the structural members, an obvious structural defect and concern. If you continue through the thing, you can see where the structure is open and it obviously has been, I can't tell you who was in there or whatever was in there, but they're obviously using that property. There's left their garbage and debris there. And if that's a immediate risk to the public safety with an open situation like that. As you continue through the presentation, you'll see further that there's more garbage and debris on the site. So with that being said and shown, based on my observations as inspector and the supplied photos which confirm the above conditions exist at the property, I request the Planning Commission to A, approve the submitted draft resolution to declare the property blighted, B, document its planning recommendation for future uses of the property. And C, otherwise advance the listed property to the Blighted Review Committee for further proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson. I'm going to add this, and I know I mentioned it to each one individually, but it's appearing that 217 ends up being, is that a different property or the rear of the same?
It's the rear of the same property, but it's a different owner.
All right, we will act on those separately, but I'm going to allow you to do 217 as well. right
Okay,
now.
okay. So 217 Hobart Street in the rear, it's owned by Ospado. They were sent notification of the hearing on 4/29, notice of violation on 4/6 of 2021. The property was condemned in November 2nd of 2017. Per section 304.1.1 of the 2009 International Property Maintenance Code, subsection 12, there are signs of structural deterioration of the stairs and the porch that do not allow for safely supporting nominal loads and load effects. And sections 108.1.3 of the 2009 IPMC, which requires essential equipment and utilities to be in good working order. Section 304.1.1 subsection 6 also applies because of the condition of the foundation of the building. Section 302.1 requires that the property be maintained in a clean, safe, and sanitary condition. These defects meet 1712.2, 1712.1C, 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the PA Urban Redevelopment Law. And the next page again, I won't go through them again if you guys don't mind, is the same conditions that the PA Redevelopment Law states. And as we go through the pictures, you could see picture 1 is a frontal of the property. Well, it's the front of the rear of the property. And as you get into pictures 2, you can see the similar conditions to the next property exist with the broken fence, a rear deck style fire escape type atmosphere there. It's kind of crumbling and falling apart. You can see in the yard that there's debris and garbage from the yard falling apart, and from the staircase and everything else falling apart. It's in really bad shape. And I continue to see that through the pictures. It shows the structural integrity of the stairs is absolutely gone. You could also see that the property has been boarded up, broken into and boarded up, and all the utilities are pulled to the property. So there is no electric or anything else going to the property at this time. And we from our inspection, we do believe the property has been was being entered by vagrants or whoever it may be. And you can see as you further down, go through the presentation, you can see more debris and garbage that are just being dumped on the site. It's becoming a real eyesore, both 215 and 217. And the last picture is where we boarded it up, and then there's copies of our postings and our letters to the owner. So with that being said and shown, based on my observations as inspector and the supplied photos which confirm the above conditions exist at the property, I request the Planning Commission to A, approve the submitted draft resolution to declare the property blighted, B, document its planning recommendation for future uses of the property, and C, otherwise advance the listed property to Blighted Property Review Committee for further proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson. Any questions from anyone on the Planning Commission for Mr. Simonson in reference to the properties on Hobart Street, 215 and 217? Again, we will act on these individually. Any questions? Anyone from the public that has any comment concerning these two properties? Nothing seen, Rick? Can I entertain a motion as it pertains to the property listed at 215 Hobart Street?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed resolution determining 215 Hobart Street as blighted and approving the planning recommendations for future uses of the property as per the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law and various city ordinances, including Article 149 of the City Codified Ordinances, and to forward these recommendations to the Blighted Properties Review Committee and the City Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Malozzi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Barker, thank you. Roll, please.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi,
Yes.
Mr. Burgos,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Malowski,
Yes, acting now on 217 Hobart Street. I will entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed resolution determining 217 Hobart Street rear as blighted and approving the planning recommendations for future use of the property as per the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law and various city ordinances, including Article 149 of the City Codified Ordinances, and to forward these recommendations to the Blighted Properties Review Committee and the City Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Malozzi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Barker, thank you. Roll, please.
Mr. Malozzi,
Yes.
Mr. Burgos,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Malowski,
Yes,
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
thank you. Back to you, Mr. Simonson, for the property listed at 709 Atlantic Street.
Thank you. 709 Atlantic, owner name Felipe Angarita. Notice of the hearing was sent on 4/29. Notice of violation was sent on 4/6/21, excuse me. Date of condemnation was 9/24 of 2019. Per section 304.1.1 of the 2009 International Property Maintenance Code, there are signs of structural deterioration that questions the structural integrity of the structure and accessory structures, and section 108.1.3 of the 2009 IPMC, which requires essential equipment and utilities to be in good working order. Section 304.1.1 subsection 6 also applies because of the condition of the foundation of the building. Section 302.1 requires that the property be maintained in a clean, safe, and sanitary condition. These defects meet 1712.1C 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the PA Urban Redevelopment Law. These are the same, the next page is the same violations that we have presented for the PA Urban Redevelopment Law. And then as we get into the pictures, 709, as you can see, is a rather large structure. Utilities have been cut to this property. The property has sit vacant for several years. It's become, as you scroll through the pictures, you can see it's become a dumping ground. We do believe that this property too has been entered by vagrants, for lack of a better term. You can see that on the next page where we posted it in 2019. And then as you go in through the pictures, you can see there's accessory structures in the back of this property as well that are also in poor condition. These are garages that face on the alley behind Atlantic Street, but are associated with the property. And as you go through, you can see they actually have collapsed. So their structural integrity is not in question. It's just degraded. And then you can see more dumping on the site, and we kind of taped up and stuff for hazardous conditions. So this is another property that is in very bad shape. And with that being said and shown, based on my observations as inspector and the supplied photos which confirm the above conditions exist at the property, I request the Planning Commission to A, approve the submitted draft resolution to declare the blighted property, B, document its planning recommendation for future uses of the property, and C, otherwise advance the listed property to the Blighted Property Review Committee for further proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson. Does anyone from the Planning Commission have any questions or comments for Mr. Simonson as it pertains to 709 Atlantic Street?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Barker.
Let me ask you one question. So it's posted in 2019.
Yes.
Why do these things take so long?
These take a while for several reasons. COVID was around, and we're limited in our capacity to condemn and remove properties and stuff like that. But these properties from 2019, when they change hands and change owners, we have to start our process all over again. So it's unfortunate that once we start this and owners change, we kind of get it kind of hits the reset button on us. So as we go, it just took a while.
So what does it do? It just starts with a complaint from a neighbor or something?
We always take complaints from neighbors. So when neighbors complain, we go out and investigate the property. But the key to a lot of these, as you can see, there's a lot of people, a lot of damage to properties, but the vacancy is the key issue on these.
In my opinion, I mean, this is almost everywhere lately. I mean,
Yeah.
I see this everywhere throughout the city. I mean, somebody's got to step up, and I mean, I'm not saying you're doing a great job, but we need to have like somebody be able to step up and say, hey, come on. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, we're actively pursuing the blight now.
Good. Keep it going. Good job.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes, I just want to confirm the last picture, it looks like a side building. That's part of the same property?
Yes, if you look at the front, let me just take a look here. You kind of look at the very first picture, you could see that's off to the right.
Okay, so it includes the main structure, the side structure, and then the structures in
Yes,
the rear?
yes,
Thank you.
yes.
any other questions from the planning commission for Mr. Simonson? Any comment or questions from the public? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion as it pertains to 709 Atlantic Street.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed resolution determining 709 Atlantic Street as blighted and approving the planning recommendations rather for future uses of the property as per the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law and various city ordinances, including Article 149 of the city codified ordinances, and to forward these recommendations to the Blighted Properties Review Committee and the City Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Malossi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Barker, roll please.
Mr. Burgos.
Yes.
Ms. Cohen.
Yes.
Mr. Malowski.
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Mr. Malauzi.
Yes.
And finally, our last vacant property review, 322 State Street.
Thank you. 322 State Street. Its owner's name is Victor Ivanov. Date of hearing was set in 420, notice of hearing was sent in 4/29/2021. Notice of violation was sent on 4/6/21. Date of condemnation was 9/11/18. Per section 304.1 of the 2009 International Property Maintenance Code, section 12, there are signs of structural deterioration of the steps and porches that does not allow for the safely supporting nominal loads and load effects. And section 108.1.3 of the 2009 IPMC, which requires essential equipment and utilities to be in good working order. Section 304.1.1 subsection 6 also applies because of the condition of the foundation of the building. Section 302.1 requires the property be maintained in as clean, safe, and sanitary conditions. These defects meet 1712.1C 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the PA Urban Redevelopment Law. Again, the next page is the violations on the PA Urban Redevelopment Law. And then as we get into the pictures, you can see this is a part of a row home. 322 joins up with the next couple of properties. And you can see as you go through the debris, and over time we condemn the property due to lack of utilities. And then there was some work done on the property, and then the work stopped and kind of went back and forth. So with the owner, and then it has since ceased. So that's where we took our action. You can see broken windows, wood. You can see the break in the foundation there a little bit on the next page. And on the first couple of pages, you can see, first couple of pictures, excuse me, you can see the debris, and it's just become an eyesore. With that being said and shown, based on my observations as inspector and the supplied photos, which confirm the above conditions exist at the property, I request the Planning Commission to A, approve the submitted draft resolution to declare the property blighted, B, document its planning recommendation for future uses of the property, and C, otherwise advance the listed property to Blighted Property Review Committee for further proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Simonson. Any questions or comments by the Planning Commission? Anyone from the public have any comments or questions concerning the property at 322 State Street? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I believe the property owner is on. I don't know if he's.
Do we have any comment from anyone online at this time? We do not.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion, please.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed resolution determining 322 State Street as blighted and approving the planning recommendations for future uses of the property as per the Pennsylvania Urban Redevelopment Law and various city ordinances, including Article 149 of the city codified ordinances, and to forward those recommendations to the Blighted Properties Review Committee and the City Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Mr. Malonzi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Barker, roll please.
Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Malowski,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Mallozy,
Yes.
Mr. Burgos.
Yes.
Mr. Simonson, thank you. You have been very thorough and efficient, and we appreciate your hard work and time and energy that you put forth. Rest assured, to piggyback off of what Mr. Barker had said, we know that the city is trying to do the best job they can to stay on top of this. I've been a part of the planning commission now almost 10 years, and every year we really focus as much as possible on these types of properties. Often is the case that if you looked at some of the addresses of the owners of these properties, that may be some of the cause of the problem. I believe one was listed in Atlanta, Georgia. So our goal as a city is to try to make sure we're taking care of our backyard. And if that means trying to improve these and hopefully inspire someone within our city to take ownership, that would be great. So thank you for your time, Mr. Simon.
Thank you. Thank you, board.
Our next agenda item is the street vacation at Luna and Bushkill Streets. Will the representative please step forward, introduce yourself, give your name, address for the record, and once you are ready to go, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Michael Verschuti on behalf of Michael and Gretchen Devers. Michael Devers is here. They are the owners of 129 Luna Street. They are seeking to vacate a portion of Luna Street and a portion of Bushkill Street. We have filed a petition with the City Council as before you. The petition is joined and consented to by the neighboring property owner, which is Sharkan Realty. It has also been reviewed by the Public Works Director. The City of Bethlehem does own an adjacent parcel there, and they reviewed it and determined that there was no utilities, and I believe that their review also consents to the vacation of the street. If you look at the screen, this is the area that would be vacated on Luna Street. Luna Street essentially dead ends there at the property at 129. In fact, it essentially just acts as the driveway now to 129. There's no macadam there except the little bit that is noted on the plan there. So that right now serves as a way to get into the property. And then Bushkill Street, which you can see a little bit on this one, but it'd be on the next one. That area would be that's the area of Bushkill Street. Right now, there is currently a shed that is partially on the unopened section of Bushkill Street. Bushkill Street was never opened. This was originally a part of a subdevelopment plan. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this area of the city, but it's off Elizabeth Avenue, across from Moravian College. You go down off Monocacy Street to get there. And Bushkill Street was never opened. It was the edge of the development. So what my client is seeking to do is the property at 129 is dilapidated, unfit for human habitation. He's going to raise that property and wants to build a house. The vacation of the two streets would allow him a little more flexibility. You want to go to the next one? Not sure it's on there. This one, did you see that one?
We have that one, Mr. Rashid.
Okay.
That
So-
one is in our,
All right, so this
Excellent.
one, you can see where the footprint of the existing house is, where the footprint of the proposed house would be. And then if you look at the bottom left corner, there is a proposed 3-car detached garage. As planned, as right now, based on the plan, basically the garage would be useless. The third garage would be useless. It only lit, what, 4 feet or 5 feet between the house and the garage. So vacating Bushkill Street, which is also already, and Luna Street would allow him to shift that a little bit further away from the house and down to give him enough clearance without having to get too big of a variance from the zoning hearing board or no variance from the zoning hearing board on the setback requirements. So that's pretty much the plan. We do have a picture if you wanted to see. That's what we're talking about from where it is now. Luna Street would actually, it should be a lot larger, and it's been overgrown and not maintained by the city. And then Bushkill Street, you can't even see from there because it's just vegetation. So, and the topography of the land, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the paint mill is below this. So Sharkin Realty actually owns the paint mill, and they consented to this. They have no objection because it's not something they could access from their property anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Raschuti. Ms. Heller or Ms. Samuelson, is there anything else to add from the city in reference to this, or Mr. Dorner? I don't know if there's anything.
Maybe if, I'm going to speak then after him.
We did take a look. There's no city utilities in the area. It's really at the end of, developed area, nothing beyond it that could be accessed. So we didn't have any issue with location.
Thank you, Mr. Dorner. Ms. Samuelson.
Yes, for some reason, I think inadvertently, what was left out of your packet was Mr. Alcohol's approval regarding Public Works.
That's why I'd asked. So
Yes, and sorry about that, but also we do prepare a memo, and basically we're summarizing the findings of fact that were stipulated by Attorney Raschuti and Mr. Dorner, and the Planning Bureau does recommend the vacation of the two streets.
Thank you, Ms. Samuelson. Anyone from the Planning Commission have any questions for Mr. Raschuti or his client at this time in reference to the street vacation? Ms. Cohen.
Who owns, the city owns the streets right now? Or does the owner?
Yes, the city owns the streets. That would be,
So how does that affect your setbacks for your garage?
well, they're going to be vacated and they'll become part of our property when they become vacated. We'll be recording a new deed.
Okay. And then you'd have to have the consolidation of the lots, or does this cover the consolidation of lots as well?
Not through a former lot consolidation plan, but I think one of the things I was going to discuss with the applicant, it's a good idea to create a new deed, just showing,
Yes,
incorporating those streets.
We would get a new legal description, yes.
And record it, yeah.
Thank you.
And with a vacation, typically half goes to each adjoining property owner. Is that the case here?
In this case for Luna Street, I think that's the case, but when I spoke to Mr. Alcohol, the city, I'm not sure they're going to ask for their half.
I did speak to Eric Evans about it, and the entire thing is permitted to go to you. And then the other one, I think that Mr. Sharkin, did he formally give up his half?
I believe he did, and I believe there's also case law because the land never came from Sharkin Realty. The original, when the subdivision was proposed, that was the end of the subdivision, that line. So there's a provision in case law that says that you can't gain something you never had based off a street vacation. So the Sharkin Realty never included that street to begin with that was taken, and it would go back to the underlying owner, which is now my client. And if your solicitor wants,
Councilor Haley, if you don't mind.
Sure. The general rule of law is where the property boundary is called in a deed to go to a street, the property owner owns to the center of the street. I don't know what these deeds say for Mr. Schuti's client or the neighboring property where the developer, where the realtor company owns. So it's hard for me to express in a vacuum a formal legal opinion that you can rely on to answer your question. The general rule is where a property boundary in a deed is referenced as a street, the property owner owns to the center of the street. And if it's vacated, the property owner only acquires up to the center line of that street. But without seeing the deeds, I can't give an opinion.
Certainly, before we act on this, Mr. Raschuti and Mr. Devers, I am in favor of the street vacation, but certainly I want to make sure you're understood as
Yes.
Attorney Healy addressed and not that plans are made and then lo and behold, you find out that you're, anything you want to build, you don't have the room for now. So I would think that that's probably something you want to make sure you.
Even if it's only half of Bushkill Street, he'll still have the room for what he does. And I think we'll work that out with Mr. Sharkan, with Mr. Aboud, who is the owner of
And
Sharkan.
certainly we're not acting on anything that you're doing down the road. We are acting on the street vacation.
Correct. And I'm sure Mr. Rashuti is going to use normal good care as he normally would to make that assessment before he would recommend us to do anything.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions from the planning commission?
There's a need to
Mr.
be,
Malozzi?
with any sort of action taken tonight and we are just recommending to council, correct?
Right.
For the
Yes,
vacation.
we are passing along to city council our recommendation for the street vacation
Correct.
at Luna and Bushkill.
That's correct.
Would there need to be any reference to the, condition on the city
No.
and the applicant taking care of the Bushkill Drive?
No,
No,
not
okay.
necessary.
Nothing special, okay. I knew it's a good idea the shed's going because it was built in Bushkill Drive, so I see it's over the property line. Gonna have to get rid of that.
Unfortunately, that was built before any of us were here.
Any comment or questions from anyone online concerning the street vacation, Luna and Bushkill? I will entertain a motion at this time, again for recommendation, our recommendation passing along to city council.
I'll make a motion to recommend to city council the approval of the consideration for the vacation of both Luna Drive and Bushkill Drive, Bushkill Street rather, as petition outlined in the April 9th, 2021 letter from Attorney Rashuti.
Thank you, Mr. Malozzi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Barker. Roll, please.
Mr. Malowski,
Yes.
Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi,
Yes.
Mr. Burgos.
Yes.
Ms. Cohen.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Rashuti. Thank you, Mr. Devers. Best of luck moving forward. I know you will be in good hands with Mr. Rashuti there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next, go ahead. Our next agenda item, we have a land development plan at 774, 784 Hellertown Road, gas station and a Wawa. I assume, is the representative here, Ms. Heller, or online?
Yeah, Attorney Holtzinger, yeah.
You can have them
Yeah,
come
yeah,
in.
come in.
We're ready to go. I want to thank again our tech support, Rick, tonight for doing an outstanding job. Thank you, Rick.
Tech support.
I probably jinxed us all now.
Tech support company.
That's AutoZone.
I got you.
Good, good.
I'm sorry, it's a brown room in front.
Gentlemen, please come on in. Come on in. We'll give you a minute to, Attorney Holzinger is familiar with the environment here, so we'll give you a minute to get settled in. Once you are ready to go, please introduce yourself, give your name for the record. Our tech support, Rick, has everything online for you. If there's anything you need as we progress through it, let him know. Thank you.
Okay. As you know, this is the site along the west side of 412 on the outskirts of Hellertown. As we talked about last time, this is an entranceway to the city. When we were here last time, you made a favorable recommendation to support the grant of certain variances. Those variances, both the use variances regarding the removal of the billboard and also the retail sales gasoline use in the CO zone were approved. So too were all the dimensional uses. Plan was, the plan essentially that we showed the zoning board was what we showed you at the time. So there were no changes necessary to the overall site plan. There's now a review letter that's in front of you. And I think there are I think everything we'll be able to comply with, but we do have a couple of things. One is a discussion regarding a potential waiver for curbing and sidewalk in the rear of the property. And the other thing we wanted to talk about was the gateway element, which is the welcome to the city sign. I don't know which one you'd prefer to start with.
Mr. Holzinger, let's start first with the curb and in the back.
I'll ask CJ Bach, our project engineer, to.
Hello, can I be heard? Not on?
You're good.
Hello? Testing. Yeah, we are looking for, we had requested, we submitted a letter to request. Sorry?
Before you get into that, we're not acting on that tonight. And I forwarded that message to both of you because we don't have a formal response from the engineering department. That will have to wait until another time.
I guess a question for Mr. Healy would be, is it possible to get a conditional approval from the planners subject to engineering's final review regarding a waiver with respect to sidewalk and curb in the rear?
Well, I wouldn't normally recommend the planning commission act on a waiver until you get the recommendation from the engineer.
We understand that, but we would perhaps come back just on that limited issue.
If you're agreeable to come back to finish the approvals for that purpose, I don't think that's a problem.
And then ask for approval on everything else we're doing this evening, or in the we'd have to talk about a deferral possibly too.
Well, that's what I believe I sent to you, isn't it, Tracy?
Yes, but here,
was it a deferral or a waiver?
In the spirit of transparency, can we please hear what we are not going to be acting on?
Yes.
Because
Sure.
that's what I just said.
we have
Yes.
5 members up here that I'm not certain, Ms.
Okay.
Samuelson,
I'm happy to
what
explain.
you're saying. I'd like to hear
Sure.
what they have to say.
Sure.
Whether or not we act on it, I have no problem with that based upon but I really don't know what it is you're talking about right now. So I'd like to.
Totally understand. The Commerce Boulevard specifically, there's a requirement that we provide for curb and sidewalk on our frontages. And Commerce Boulevard currently does not have any curb. They do have a sidewalk. There is curb and sidewalk on Hellertown. There is no curb on Commerce currently. The road is sheeted. Sheet flows right into a gut, like a roadside swale, a grass swale. And we were looking for relief from installing that curb, mostly because I think it's dangerous to the stormwater, or it's adverse at least, to then, to take water that goes through the green swale and the grass and then kind of put it through pipes and inlets, and have to essentially direct discharge it, without that benefit. So it just kind of makes sense that you wouldn't install curb here. There is no curb there. Nobody's ever put curb there.
I believe that was briefly mentioned last time as well. Is that
Sure.
correct, So, Ms. Samuelson, now that it's refreshed, and I apologize for the confusion, I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. What is the issue that now you had mentioned with, we're waiting on the engineer? Go ahead.
And Matt is going to speak to that, but one regarding the receipt of a request was really just this week, and they were not able to look at it thoroughly. But Matt, can you address that?
Mr. Dorn.
Yeah, I think it's really just a matter of we didn't have enough time to confidently come up with a recommendation. We do agree there are stormwater issues where that water does flow there. We feel like we just didn't have enough time to look at other alternatives, whether that's where we want to go and defer that curb, or if there's some other options. So I think we just didn't feel like we had enough time to make a final decision. But
Yeah, we only got the written request, and just this week we got to the conclusion that that's what we needed to do and send that in. And so, yeah, he's only had it for a few days.
And we're, we agree with what they're saying. We don't deny that, but what the final, where we end up, I think we just need some more time to decide that. If there's other
I'll,
options.
I'll go to Counselor here. Moving forward, I mean, is this something now that they need to return back once we have that information from engineering?
I don't think you can determine what your position is on the potential condition, whether they, they're more or less asking, will you grant some kind of conditional approval subject to a further decision on a waiver or series of waiver requests? I don't know that you can put that in terms, but no matter what, it's still coming back to you next month, probably.
And that's fine. I would have, again, this is just me, in my opinion, I don't want to speak for the group. I would, if they only received documentation or a memo this week, then why are we inconveniencing these gentlemen by coming here tonight when they're going to have to return now next month? And why wasn't that memo, if they were notified that they were going to be on the Maine Planning Commission meeting, why was that memo sent when it was?
Yeah.
So
Tracy and I have been working together very closely over the last couple of weeks, just through the letter. And again, we kind of just recently came to the conclusion that the best approach would be to ask for the deferral. We typed it up, we sent it in just this week. We've been working very closely over the last, like I said, last couple of weeks on this. Certainly, we're happy to come to the board.
So is the city's wishes to hold off on this until next month?
You'd have to grant some kind of conditional approval either tonight or just take all of the information you're going to hear and then defer till next month to take action. That would probably be the more normal way to do it.
I'm
Second,
fine.
Is there a specific comment that captures this? Is it number 4?
I
Yes.
believe it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you were to be granted conditional approval, as it stands right now, the curb has to be added. And then if you were to come back next time requesting a deferral of curbing, because they can't get approval and record plans until they meet all these conditions.
I would be okay with that.
I would be fine with that, and that can be handled in the way that we act on it, make a motion.
But in the
Correct.
meantime, they would have some certainty about.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
And that's fine, Mr. Buck.
That's what we're looking for.
And again, I hate to make, I'm not making an issue of it, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page, right? I just needed, I went through some chemo and stuff, so I have a little flaw sometimes, so.
It's still there.
Mr. Buck,
Are we,
you're next, yes.
1 second. Do
Yes,
you have
sir.
any timeline issues for reviews? and
That's why we think you might want to act on it conditionally tonight, and then the timeline goes away. Anybody can come back for a deferral at any time, even just for a simple, property.
Right.
So yeah, I believe, I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's safe to say you'd rather have an action tonight on the
Yes.
plan. And then if you care, because then this says you must put curb in. If you
Right.
say, I have good reasons and we have time to review and we alter that, then that does have to come back to this board.
And we've done that before. I
Yes,
know
we
we
have.
have. So
And we can. live
thank
with
you
that.
for that. Good.
Yeah, and approval helps us a lot with Wawa, the
Right.
owner,
Right.
locking down deals.
Mr. Bach, what is the second point that we,
I would defer to Jim.
Mr. Holmes here.
Gateway sign. Yes, sir.
The second one was last time we were here, there was discussion about a gateway sign, sort of like welcome to Bethlehem. We submitted a sign that the owner put together and submitted, and it didn't pass muster. And now I understand that there's some sort of contest for gateway entrances and so forth. And the city came back, and I think in your review letter, it talked about a $50,000, fee or contribution to an arts plan and so forth. In discussions with Tracy and Darlene in the last several days, we indicated that we would be willing to put up $20,000, which is about what the cost of the sign to us would be, turn over that responsibility to the city. We would allow it to be placed at an easement that we would agree upon on the southern end of the property. We would provide access to the easement area for the city to install the sign. They would manufacture it. They would, or construct it. They would place it. And then we also had concerns that we didn't want anything with neon or flashing lights or that sort of thing, or digital signs, that it would only have reflective lighting. and that we also had a concern over the height. And then one of the things that, you know, Nick, who's the owner of this property, as you know, Chris's Restaurant, it's been a fixture here. You know, it was the gateway to the city for years, and all the steel workers knew it. He wanted to have some say in what happened. So too does Wawa. So I broached with Darlene the issue of creating a 4-person committee. Of the 4 people, 2 would be appointed by the city so that the city would have representation. 1 would be Nick as the owner or his designated agent. The 4th would be somebody from Wawa, so that there would be 2 people for the city, 2 of the independents. So neither one could control the day, and they would be forced to work together to come to a conclusion. And I believe Darlene, you know, and I agreed that that would be a reasonable approach. And then my understanding is requests for proposals would go out to artists. They would submit what they thought was appropriate. Nick and a Wawa rep, and Wawa is willing to provide somebody, and it's going to be their store. It's Nick's property, obviously. And then I think this committee can finalize a decision, and then it would be turned over to the city. The one thing we did talk about was that the lease or the easement would be for 30 years, which is the lease potential with Wawa, so that if there's ever a different use of the property, you know, we don't want to hinder any development 30 years out from that.
Right.
I think we have all of those issues ironed out.
And I would say that, and especially on in our South Side area, our arts district, and a lot of our artistic things that have been placed down there, I think are really, really neat. And I'm certain that our city is going to make sure that's done the right way. I have to ask this question though, and believe me, I get it. Everything has a cost, but is there justification to a $50,000? I mean, I would like to see, like, if there is, like, show me the line items, how it came up with that amount.
Well,
Because that's a lot of money, even though Wawa
No,
is
that's
an
not a lot.
outstanding, and believe me, they're getting a lot of national recognition. I've been watching this Mayor of Easttown, great show. They're all Wawa's all over, but $50,000 for a contest or sign, you got to help me out with that.
We mirrored the description of the process and the proposal to a process that we're doing right now with, we have grant funding from Northampton County for something similar at Founder's Way. And they have given us a grant in the amount of $50,000 to do an RFP, to solicit artists, to do a gateway piece. And we thought this was similar. So honestly, we just put that out there. That's what we are doing with a county grant. And it is a process that I think is, I mean, I see it as a pretty feel-good kind of a project.
I agree, and I said that earlier, I agree.
The Southside Arts District is a part of that, Fine Art Commission. I think you get the community involved, and it's a piece that then reflects some of the characteristics of our own community. And I really thought that this would, if Wawa is willing to do some piece like this, then Wawa can be a partner. And we can have a couple of members of our arts community be a partner, and we can put parameters within the RFP. And so I certainly understand that they have concerns, you know, the size, the location, the foundation that it's placed on, the maintenance. We can put parameters in an RFP. And so they have some comfortability with the process and the end result.
And quite
But the dollar amount really came from just a similar process that we're working.
From a grant, right? That it wasn't something
So
that.
we didn't just pull it out of the sky. It was based on a similar project. But you know, we've talked with Wawa, and they felt like you know, we'll have a scaled down project, and they were comfortable with that.
Yeah, we actually based our offer of 20,000 based on what we thought was the upper end of what it would cost for us to design, construct, and place the sign.
And
this was really on the high.
That to me, there's an experienced dollar amount, because they've done it before, right?
Right.
And believe me, Ms. Heller, I am in favor of everything you said. The grant money that's given is grant money that's given in the field of education, in schools, college. That's a dollar amount. I would like that dollar amount though to kind of match what it is they're doing. And certainly I know Wawa will help out as much as they can, as much as they feel what's fair, right? But I just wanted clarification on that one. So moving forward, Ms. Heller, is it safe to say that you will have all those groups involved in the selection of this sign, the Fine Arts Committee? I know Mr. Holzinger mentioned the previous owner of Nick's, who's here, and will we have an opportunity to see that? I know some planning commission members probably want to ask that.
I'd like to. I
Well,
just don't want to make the,
we have, you know, an arts community that we engage for that purpose. We have a fine art commission, and that's the commission that we go to for expertise. And I, certainly the applicant is interested in having an equal partnership at the table, which I completely understand, and that's very fair. We can certainly bring that back to you to let you know how we end up.
Yeah, at least let us know what was decided on.
Sure.
That's-
we can do that.
I just don't want to make the same mistake that and you got to be very careful when you talk about art. Okay.
This is a
It's some
gateway
people,
piece
I
that's gonna
get
be
it,
on
I
their
understand, but we have a
property, and
gateway
they
piece on
certainly
3rd
wanna make
Street.
sure,
We have a
right.
big gateway piece on 3rd Street where they took the United States Steelworker, which my father had to be, and they put a pig nose on him. That's a slap in the face to every United States Steelworker, in my opinion. To the artist, I'm quite sure he has a different opinion. So I would like to see the end result, whatever we're putting there. I think the planning commission should see it and say yes or no to it, in my opinion. No, Tracy?
No, I don't think
Oh.
it's.
No, it'd be
We agreed that we would sit down with the applicant and the owner and the art
Who though?
community.
Who's we? Who's, I mean,
We did with the applicant and the owner.
I know,
I mean,
Mr.
it's certainly-
You
it's-
talked about 4 people.
Well, what I'm
That-
saying is
that-
that they can have as many people as they want design or submit designs or whatever.
Right.
We wanted to have a final say in what went on, but we didn't want Nick to be alone on a committee of 10 or 12 where his vote gets lost in the woods. So we devised a way to come up with 4 where there's 2 and 2. I mean, we could show you what we had in mind if you'd want to see that.
I'd like to see the end, and I'm quite sure he would, and he would. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe you could ask to be one of the 2 members from the city.
Love to be.
I would say, and I respect Mr. Barker's passion about it, and that has come up before. And I would say, let's make sure the process, right, is open with everyone. I'm fine with the committee of 4 and everyone's involved, but at least, because this won't be the last time this will come up. We have a lot of gateways throughout our city, right? So hopefully, at least come back to us and say, look, this is what the committee decided, and show us so that we're all involved, at least from a right to know kind of situation. That's all. Thank you, Ms. Heller.
The other thing about this is that we don't want this to be connected to the approvals. I mean, other than that, we would make an easement area set aside, subject to the terms, so that the project can be approved. It may take 6 months to a year to get some sort of gateway sign through this program.
So as we act on this, then I obviously would have an issue under the general comments section on page 2, number 5, the last sentence, the dollar amount. Can we can amend that, change that?
But it's just a recommendation from the planning office.
They're agreeing to, I think, to that comment, except that they're saying they believe that the $20,000 amount is a reasonable amount, and we're concurring with that. So if you want to approve the plan with this letter and just make that revision, that's I think that's fine.
That's
Thank-
certainly well within.
Thank you, Ms. Heller.
And I
Thank
would
you,
also
Mr.
ask you to add about this 4-person committee, because that's not,
Okay.
that's,
That's true. That's
that's
true.
outside
Fine.
of this.
We'll entertain that when that time comes. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Holzinger, Mr. Bach from the Planning Commission?
Are there any other, excuse me,
Mr. Malozzi?
are there any other items in the review letter? We discussed two of them that you have concern about complying with?
No, I do not.
And just so I'm clear, what was that dollar figure? What was the statement just made on that? Okay.
Anything else to add? Anyone online, public comment that would like to make any comments on or questions for the Hellertown Road Wawa? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion at this time. Keep in mind some of the additions that were mentioned by Mr. Holzinger in reference to the committee of 4 to help with that gateway sign, along with the dollar amount that was mentioned by the city being decreased to 20,000. And also, in that motion, do we need to have a separate motion for, or just act on it the way it is, and then they come back for the condition on the curb? Act on it the way it is, and then they have to.
You need to act on it the way it is,
Right.
with the idea that you may modify the curb and sidewalk requirement with a waiver if
Yes.
presented.
But he said that, I mean, will there be approval from the planning commission for the sign?
I'm told by city staff, no. We will see it, but we will not.
Is it correct that the 4-person committee would make the final selection as proposed?
I think the idea is to have.
Mhm.
Do this, and that's their expertise.
Okay, so that committee would look at,
Right. Yeah, I mean, you may have 50 artists come up with a proposal, but it'll ultimately come down to the 4 that I talked about would make the ultimate. Because maybe the city will like something, but the other 2 won't. But maybe they can get together and talk with a given artist and say, hey, if you make this change or do this, it's, I think we're trying to do this in the spirit of cooperation.
There's a comment in chat with intent, so we'll have to make sure we're talking.
Into the
I'm
mic.
sorry.
Yeah. Was that it? There were 2 comments here. Was there anything else besides that?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will entertain a motion at this time as it pertains to the land development plan at 774, 784 Hellertown Road. I just did.
okay. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the application for gas station and retail store land development plan at 774, 784 Hellertown Road. Condition upon meeting the items outlined in the city's May 6th letter, and with specific reference to the section labeled general, comment number 5, that an acceptable agreement with the city be made that includes an easement, access to the site, $20,000 contribution from the applicant toward a gateway sign, and the formation of a 4-person committee to include 2 members appointed from the city, 1 from the owner and 1 from Wawa.
Thank you, Mr. Malozzi. Do we have a second?
Second.
Wait,
Second,
for purpose of the final selection of the sign and design?
Yes.
that was not
Okay, that wasn't in the
for the
motion.
4. The
Right,
4 will
Yes.
decide, yes.
I want to make sure that's in the motion.
That the committee will have final authority over selection of the design for the sign.
That's the motion.
That's the motion. Mr. Barker seconded. Before we take roll, I will remind Mr. Holzinger, Mr. Bach, as it's written now, and until, as Ms. Samuelson said, until the engineering document memo gets squared away, then you will have to return for a waiver if you choose to do so, right? Okay, otherwise that curb issue as it stands is in there now. Clarification. Roll, please.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi,
Yes.
Mr. Burgos,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Malowski.
Yes. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Best of luck and looking forward to it. Thank you. Our next land development plan at 501, 507 Wyandotte and 414, 420 Broadway, the AutoZone retail building. I will give the representatives here today a few minutes to get set up. Once you are ready to go, our technology support, Rick, can help in any way. And once you're ready to go, introduce yourself and you may begin.
I think I'm ready if you folks are.
Yeah.
Good evening, Deborah Shulsky here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Bill Roundtree on behalf of the developer for AutoZone. And we have our traffic consultant, Dave Horner. And I believe we have Chris Peters, our engineer, was going to be joining us virtually if he's on there. I can't tell, but.
Good evening. I am here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So you may recall, it's been some time now, but we were before you several times back in the fall, which time we presented the full plan, the sketch plan to you on certain waiver requests, all of which you ended up ultimately granting. Since that time, we've continued to work with your staff. One of the very sensitive waivers that you had granted was with respect to some of the architectural design. And we know it was a very important corner for the city and for the staff. And we were committed to continuing to work with them to come up with a facade, even though those waivers were granted, that would be acceptable to the city. So we have been working with them for a number of months. We submitted, obviously, the land development plans. We've received the first set of reviews. We resubmitted them. AutoZone has made a number of concessions over the last few months with respect to the design of the building, adding windows, adding columns, which, you know, we thought that were definitely in the spirit of what the city was looking to do. As late as this past Friday, we've received another sketch from the zoning officer asking if we could please consider some additional architectural features. Quite honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of hope that AutoZone was going to do that, just given all the concessions they had already made. But Bill went back to them and worked with them, and we got approval from them, I believe yesterday or the day before, that they were acceptable in a design that we presented to the city staff, which our understanding is they have approved with respect to the architectural design. So there's a lot of effort. We think it's going to be a fabulous looking building. And again, we know that this is a very sensitive area for the city. So AutoZone wanted to be, you know, just intended to be part of the community and wanted to continue to work with you. We have a recent review letter, and since we've now resolved that architectural comment from the letter, everything else in that letter is a will comply and is acceptable, with the exception of one comment listed under your public works traffic comment number 4, with respect to a left turn restriction comment. And obviously we know the city has the jurisdiction at any time to work with PennDOT and provide any studies that they may think with respect to this left turn. However, we do not believe that the left turn restriction is warranted as a result of this development, and therefore AutoZone is not agreeable to paying for that particular study should the city proceed with that study. And we have our traffic consultant here who's happy to go through any of the numbers and explain to you what the existing use numbers were versus the proposed use, or answer any questions that you may have relating to the traffic.
His name?
Dave Horner.
Mr. Horner, do you want to step and please give to us your summary of the traffic issue as it pertains to number 4 under the Public Works on the memo?
I'd be happy to. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
My name's Dave Horner, principal of the firm of Horner and Cantor Associates, working with the applicant as a traffic engineer. So with regard to that one specific item, which has to do with the left turn from Wyandotte onto Sheets, it's our position, a couple of points I guess I'd like to make just for your consideration. As it regards to the AutoZone, the previous development of that site, which was a gas station, service station, I mean, in terms of traffic volume, the AutoZone is quite a lower traffic generator. Probably in comparison, maybe about 25 trips in the peak hour compared to about 75 total for the prior use. So one, you know, in terms of a reduction in activity, that's certainly what you have here with this development. But specifically related to that movement, as far as circulation goes for the AutoZone, that's a detrimental change if that movement's not allowed, because as you know, you can't make the left turn from Wyandotte onto Broadway. And we have an access proposed on Broadway to be right in, right out only. So anybody coming down Wyandotte Street to get into the site would have to do some kind of a circulation pattern that goes quite a bit out of their way to get to the store. Same thing for anybody on Broadway coming, I guess, from the east to the west, because they can't make a left turn into the site. Not that they should at Broadway. That's an appropriate condition to be right in, right out. In terms of the safety, I know that's a concern of the commission, but we took a look at it, and I would suggest that before any left turn restriction would be considered, that perhaps an enhanced signage and striping plan be put in place. I know there's a do not block intersection sign, because the problem is the queuing of vehicles on Wyandotte at the signal. It will obviously back up past Sheets during the peak hours. So I would suggest, right now there's a do not block intersection sign, which is quite small. I would suggest a pavement striping, like a do not block the box kind of striping with a bigger sign, and then maybe even slide the center line striping over a couple of feet because you have 20 foot of width on that southbound movement, and you could make it 21 or 22, which increases the ability for cars to get around a left turn. So I think that is an option that I've advised my client would be a beneficial change. So I'm just suggesting it to the board for that consideration.
And just to clarify for anyone online, Mr. Horner, because sometimes the map isn't as clear, as best as you can, talk through if I was coming southbound on 378 on Wyandotte, and if I wanted to go left on the Sheets, that is where you're recommending that be allowed, and the city is saying not, correct?
Well, correct. I'm suggesting that there be some improvements that could be made to remedy what I think is believed to be a safety concern currently. And I know that the city's letter wasn't necessarily suggesting, they were suggesting that PennDOT be approached to make a final determination whether that left turn should be restricted. So I'm just suggesting that is the left turn movement that should remain.
Ms. Wells, is there anything from traffic to add in reference to that? I know we talked about this at great length last time, but is there anything?
Yeah, so this has been something that we've discussed with the applicant very early on, that we were concerned about the left turns. We've discussed it with past applicants in this property. We've approached PennDOT about this even before this development was considered, about past properties that we're looking at. There is some issues there now with backups. Obviously, it's not caused by their development, but there are issues there now with the minimal traffic that does use it, with somebody trying to make a left-hand turn into there, and obviously traffic on Wyandotte's backed all the way up the hill. Just a few things from my perspective in looking at this. One, there is already a do not block intersection sign there. It's not effective, unfortunately. I did ask PennDOT about the ability to have the developer stripe the do not block the box striping on the road. PennDOT said they would not allow that so close to an intersection. So that sort of wipes out, those two things that I really don't think a bigger sign is going to help. People don't even look at the sign there now. The road width, it is 20 feet wide, but unless that person is really hugging the center line, staying in the left side of the lane, which most people don't, you can't get around the vehicle. I mean, I've sat there plenty of times with someone trying to make a left-hand turn into there. The McDonald's, across the street there also has very restrictive access. You cannot make lefts from Broadway. You can't make a left onto Dakota Street. You can only make a right-hand turn from Wyandotte. So, my feeling is if McDonald's can function fine, they obviously have higher traffic than an AutoZone has. I'm not sure why this would really affect the traffic patterns of AutoZone and getting people in there. I mean, people will find the way. They'll come from the other directions. They found their way to McDonald's. So I don't, and I feel like at this time, it's the time to approach PennDOT. We've sort of been waiting for another development to come in. I mean, right now there's a few cars. It's not great, but any more cars making that left-hand turn, I think is going to cause an issue.
How many cars did you say a day?
Well, in the peak hours, we're talking about between about 14, that's total in and out, and about 25 in the afternoon and the Saturday peak. Coming from that direction, maybe we're talking about 10 or so left turns.
Ms. Wells, what is a study or the application to PennDOT? What does that cost? Because I notice here it says that you're going to require the developer to fund any necessary study that PennDOT mandates. What's a ballpark cost?
I don't know for sure that it would require a study. I mean, we would have to be the applicant since Sheet Street is our road. There's no fee for the application. I don't know that they would require a study, but we wanted to at least put that out there just in case. I mean, I would think it'd be less than $10,000. I mean, they've done some initial counts there. Like I said, I don't even know for sure that it would require a study. We just wanted to put that out there in case it would.
Is the applicant opposed? I mean, it sounds to me like PennDOT very well, according to our city staff, is going to probably get involved with this one. And it is a very, having been, as we all have, in that area in peak hours, it is tough. Is that something that you would be opposed to in terms of funding that study?
We would be. Fundamentally, we all know this corner needs to be redeveloped. It's now, I was surprised we weren't on the agenda earlier for blighted status. The seller has received notices about these properties. It's in desperate need of redevelopment. Restricting that left turn into Sheets is going to be a non-starter for most commercial developments on this corner. And that's what's going to be here, commercial development. So if you don't have that turn, I don't know what you're left with. I don't think we have the same situation that McDonald's has. They have alternate ways to get into the site. Dave could briefly speak to that if you want him to go through what movements can happen. The only movements that would be able to occur if this restriction was in place is a right into Sheets and a right off of Broadway into our site. As Dave said, if you're coming south on Wyandotte, the problem is you can't make that left onto Broadway to then make a right into our site. You can't make a left at that signal. And if you're traveling south on Broadway, you can't make a left into the site. So both of those movements would look to head south on Wyandotte and make a left into Sheets and then into our site. This would be a non-starter, and I don't know where we go from here if that restriction is in place. Now, we thought a don't block the box striping would be an option. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with city staff and went through these iterations, and we're told we might be able to meet with PennDOT, with the city, and discuss it with them. We weren't part of that conversation. We'd like to understand more about why PennDOT might restrict that, because we see that condition in urban areas all the time. As long as you're only blocking the northbound lane. So I'm not sure if DOT understood. Maybe we weren't asking to block both directions at that intersection. So number one, we really don't think a study is warranted. So we're spending well over $100,000 more on this building to meet architectural requirements we received relief for, to be good neighbors, to be, viable commercial development, to listen to what we're hearing from staff and the mayor, and trying to do what we can to make this as nice as it can be. Asking us to spend more money in the future for a study we don't think is warranted is really the only thing, I guess, that could be voted on tonight. The city can apply for whatever they want to apply for. I don't know if the planning commission has any power to prevent that, but we want to make sure we don't went on the record to say, hey, this is a big deal for any redevelopment of that corner. Another iteration that we didn't discuss tonight, if we did have to restrict it, and the city was extremely strong in their opinion that it needed to be restricted, we would like first to investigate peak hour restrictions, which we don't think are warranted, but we wouldn't be opposed to. So no lefts during the morning peak and PM peak hours, for example.
You would not be opposed for.
We don't think it's
any
warranted, but we would not be opposed to that.
Yeah, at least there's a little compromise there. And just to verify, I don't think Ms. Wells said that PennDOT has been, they haven't applied yet for this, correct? So is it possible that when that does take place, that they are in those discussions as well? Is that something we've done in the past when this is a tricky one, and I want to make sure that.
Yeah, normally we're talking about an access driveway. So it's our permit. It's real clear. It's a new opening. This is unique, and that it's a street intersection we're talking about that we don't control, and that the city has the right to make application to PennDOT without our consent. So yeah, we would ask to be part of that process. I'm not sure how to ensure that happens, but I think it would be critical.
Right. Would Mr. Horner be the gentleman that you would have if that was acceptable on the city's half?
Yes.
He would be
I would probably attend to take notes.
Ms. Heller, is that something that's on the question, or? It sounds to me like the city's going to apply to PennDOT. Yes? Right. So it is that out of the question to have Mr. Horner sit in on that as the applicant requested? As the land, as the owner of the land development, is it out of the question for them to be involved in that process? I understand. I didn't mean the applicant for PennDOT. I meant the applicants that are in front of us today asking permission for this land development.
Right. As an interested and affected party, we would ask to be part of the conversation.
I understand that. Just noting that the application would be the city's and the city would lead the discussion. But yes, as an interested party,
Right.
I think it's common.
And I'm just saying in the spirit of trying to make this right, look, no one, I think if we ask everyone in the city, you would get a large response that something needs to be developed there, right? That has sat kind of dormant, right, for a long time. And I really respect how much AutoZone has been willing to conform some of the architectural design issues and whatnot. And believe me, I'm always concerned about traffic flow, parking, all of those things. So I just think the more we're all involved, then we're probably going to have, I've heard some compromise already that they wouldn't be opposed to peak hour, no left turn on the sheets, right? So that's only going to happen if we're all involved in the dialogue. I understand that the city will apply to PennDOT for that. I think it's only fair to at least have their people involved there as well to kind of help, because this is something I'd really like to see happen. Any other comment, questions on the planning commission members?
Is is that lane 20 feet, the southbound lane on Wyandotte Street in front of the site? It's the 20-foot wide lane. Is there parking currently allowed?
Not to my knowledge, not if that's a section.
A little bit further south.
Okay. It's definitely a concern, and the McDonald's I know is signed no left turns when you're going northbound in Wyandotte, but people do it all the time, and you get stuck in that intersection. So I understand the city's concern, and it's not enough room to stripe a left turn lane. It's too close to the intersection. And
Yeah, and I believe PennDOT would require at least 12 feet. That's at least our plans, they make us do 12 feet for each lane.
right.
So it's only 20 feet.
Are there ever design waivers given for those kind of things?
I'm not sure. That could
Well, if I may, my experience with PennDOT, I would agree with Ms. Wells that it's not wide enough at 20 feet for a designated left turn lane. And even if it was to have a left turn lane with what would be the proper taper and everything, it wouldn't make sense there. But in such cases, they do consider when you have extra width, and a normal lane is 12 feet. This is 20 feet. When you have extra width, that does afford the opportunity for a waiver, let's say, if they believe that that width allows for vehicles to pass. Now, basically a vehicle for the purpose of realistic description is about 6.5 feet wide. So 2 vehicles, 6.5, that's 13, you have 7 foot of room. Now, I understand that sometimes vehicles are in the middle of the lane making the left, others are very courteous and they get over. So sometimes you could pass and sometimes you can't. But yeah, I think PennDOT would consider that as part of the equation when they're considering what to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Malozzi, go ahead. Yes.
Question. So with specific regard to comment number 4 that we were talking about, the city's statement there is very clear. It sounds like the exception that the applicant takes to that is funding the study. But knowing that even if this comment wasn't here, that it is, the city has been upfront with that they were going to apply. So that would put the applicant at risk. You know, if PennDOT did comply, did grant a restriction on left turns into the site.
Yeah, I don't think that's something we're asking for the planning commission to, it's a statement. It's not a condition of approval. It's the paying for the study that.
Understood. Okay.
We don't feel is warranted. Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, we recognize we don't have any control over,
Right.
you know, obviously the city could do that
You're-
within their jurisdiction anytime, but.
Mr. Roundtree, you're also confident though that this retail, this AutoZone, I'm confident that you're going to have some foot traffic going into this store as well from residents who do live on the south side. So again, that compromise element, you're going to, I don't know how much it will eliminate customers coming in there if PennDOT city does apply and PennDOT does restrict it. People will find a way. I just,
Yeah.
it's believe me, I understand your concerns. I do, but I also want to try to see this project move forward.
I understand. Just 2 points to your
Please.
comments. Number one is even in urban locations, AutoZones typically do not see a lot of walk-up customers. So even in the most urban of urban, this is pretty urban, but even in Center City, they want full parking because they don't get a lot of walk up. You know, you're not going to walk up for fluids typically, batteries, heavy items. If you're like my family, you're in the car when you realize your turn signal's out, so you drive to the next store. And with regard to the lefts, without a doubt will have an immediate impact on the revenue of the store, not having that left end, because although AutoZone is very proud about customer loyalty to AutoZone, if a customer can't make that left and they're in a hurry or they're frustrated and they don't know how to get there, they're more likely to move on to the next store they know they can get into than drive around the city to try to make that right in. It's a fact. It has a bottom line impact on the sales projections for the store.
Mr. Barker.
Yeah, I understand the city's position on it, but it is an improvement from what we had there before, right? I mean, we're getting, what'd you say, 50 to 75 cars a day?
Yeah, I think the difference is about 50 cars in a peak hour between a gas station with service station and AutoZone.
And how long has the current station been closed?
I have to defer to Roundtree.
I don't know the answer
Long,
to that.
5+ years.
Yeah, 3 to 5, somewhere in there.
I mean, what better use than AutoZone? I mean, so anybody that goes in there, we're gonna be having the same conversation. I mean, 25 cars a day. Not really talking about a lot of cars. Somebody's got to go in there.
Ms. Wells, if you had to put a time frame on peak hours, I mean, estimate, or are we talking 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., or is it just from your experience with that intersection?
Yeah, usually we would say like 3 to 6 p.m.
3 to 6.
Yeah, kind of encompasses the school and early and up times and then.
What data do you have, Mr. Roundtree, on the highest flux of customers at an AutoZone?
I'm not sure what you mean by highest.
When are you the busiest? What time? When's the store busy?
It's really steady state, and that'll be driven by traffic. People aren't going to go to AutoZone to get their battery if there's a lot of traffic. So it's pretty steady state.
So would it be a Monday to Friday restriction?
I would think.
Or would it be, yeah.
And you know, I said we'd be amenable to a 2-hour peak restriction, but if that 3-hour window is really the focus, I think that would be acceptable. Again, because our customers, if it's that jam-packed and that much traffic, they're not going to be driving to the AutoZone. They'll wait or they'll go earlier.
Is the process, Ms. Heller or Ms. Wells, when applying to PennDOT, the response we get from PennDOT is that's gold, that's etched in stone, that's, you know, they say no, never, at any time, then can't have it, right? Ms. Wells?
Yeah, I think, we've never done this as far as like, they consider it like a minor HOP application. I mean, I've applied to them for different signage on state routes. They actually will give us a small permit with a plan view with where the sign and what sign should be there. So it is official. I mean, we can always appeal to at some later date if we'd ever want to have it removed, but it is an official permit.
When the application, the PennDOT is placed by the city, is there somewhere on there that you can state that AutoZone is willing to comply with a potential hour, 2-hour, 3-hour restriction? Is that, again, these are some of the things that I'm trying to say, that dialogue helps compromise for everyone. And I believe me, being in education, it's like sometimes the powers that be don't allow that, and this is a tough one. Is that something that
They have like no turn on reds. We do have that where we restricted to, no turn on reds, school days from like certain times. So there
Okay.
are signs like that. I've never dealt with this kind of situation with left turns, but there are signs out there, like especially like no turn on reds that we have.
And
restrictions.
part of
What-
what,
I'm
part of what
sorry.
we would bring to the table, aside from being an interested party, is, our expertise that could help the city
Sure,
as well,
absolutely.
and help communicate with PennDOT
Sure.
and offer alternatives. And
Ms. Wells, what is the typical timeline of the application of PennDOT to be returned? Again, AutoZone has gone through a lot here, been in front of us several times. Is this a month, a 2-month application? What's the timeline?
From my experience, right now they typically have 30-day that they're supposed to respond to us. We've had other projects sitting there for months, unfortunately. So I've never done this situation. I mean, an official HOP application that goes through the system, they have to respond in 30 days. City applications, other ones that we've sent them, it's been months that we've gotten responses. So it's hard to say.
Knowing that that application will be made by the city, is that something you would still move forward on with this
Well,
pending approval?
Yeah, my understanding is this whole conversation would occur post construction, at least, I don't know if it says that in this comment, it said previously. But we feel confident, if involved, we can work with the city to come up with a solution that PennDOT would approve and that would alleviate the staff's concerns about that term movement. But an all-out left restriction would be horrible, and we get caught with a tenant who would be extremely unhappy. And what that means, I'm not sure. We're going to have a conversation with them about this.
I guess what I was trying to ask, would you be willing to table this application until we hear? And by all means, we would allow and hope that the city would allow Mr. Horner to be involved in those meetings or discussions with PennDOT to come up with some resolve and compromise.
So no, we have unfortunately a contractual closing deadline, which is why we need hopefully an approval this evening on our land development plan. And then we'd have to go from there. I think we said in the beginning, we do understand that the Planning Commission really doesn't have purview. This isn't a land development related.
Ms. Wells,
related.
has there been examples in the past similar? And again, I know this is very unique. The McDonald's down there, was that handled in the same kind of the same way? Was there an application made to PennDOT by the city? Is there any other area in the city where a developer did go ahead and prior to that application from PennDOT being received, they moved forward with it? We never heard anything back. Everything was put in place and up and running, and then we kind of went about it that way, or is that?
Unfortunately, this is really unique.
Yeah.
And most of them are, HOPs, like the Wawa that was here. They'd have an HOPs and driveway onto the state shop, which would have been figured out long before, typically long before they could submit the development plan. So this is very unique. I've honestly never had this situation with the city.
The difference here is that we don't need PennDOT approval to access sheets.
I understand.
Driven by
I
the
understand.
city wanting.
Yes, I totally understand that. I will then throw, before you ask the question, I'm going to ask you a question. Is this application of PennDOT going to be made definitively prior to AutoZone being completed?
I was going to comment that I don't want to be misleading. Mr. Roundtree just noted that he thought this was going to happen after construction, and that was not my perception of this. And I think we would want to know what the status of a review is, before things move forward. It seems a little after the fact to do it, after everything's constructed.
Have there been projects in the city in the past that have been done after the fact?
I think there were, I mean, and again, Tiffany would certainly know more better than I, but sometimes we have, if there's questions about actual traffic volume because someone doesn't really know an end user yet or something like that, then sometimes there have been conditions that 6 months after a user is in place or something like that, we would do additional study.
And
This is a little bit different. We know who the end user is, we know the traffic counts, et cetera. But so to do, to raise the question after the construction is done seems a little bit after the fact, really. So, I mean, I was thinking that we would be proceeding with the study. And I guess if the developer wants to concurrently move ahead with the project, then they certainly do that at their own risk. They have the right to do that, but I didn't know that we would be waiting necessarily.
So I may have misunderstood. I think in a previous version of the letter, it said after opening, the studies that they were asking us to pay for would be completed to see what the impact of our actual traffic was. So maybe that changed. And I
think there was also a prior letter that said something about the city in the future may request to do that, but it wasn't an affirmative, that they were definitely going to proceed with the study. It was just saying the city may, it's such time in the future, should they decide to do so, pursue it. I think that was in one of the drafts before.
If it was, we'd have to check, but this is the latest position.
In response to the question about the timeline for PennDOT, I've dealt with PennDOT. I've dealt with PP&L, and I couldn't tell you who's, I waited a year, 1 year, PennDOT.
Yep. Our experience has been, it takes a few 30-day cycles.
And then
I'll entertain any comments while we are still kind of deliberating over this. Rick, is there any one online? Any planning commission member have anything else to add?
Can I say something?
Mr. Burgos, yes.
All right, so I've seen this property. My uncle used to work at it used to be a auto park. This is way back. And is it possible to put like a light on sheets? Follow what I'm saying? If you put a light on right there on sheets, that would stop traffic coming down, and then you could have like a left turn to go in. Am I allowed to say that? No?
So, Mr. Burgos, you're saying a light for north and southbound, right?
Like if you're looking on
wind up
on sheets there, put a light right on Wyandotte and sheets.
And that light controls not only the northbound but because it is because Attorney Healy had asked this, it is a
north and south.
Right, north and south.
And if you're coming, I don't know, is sheets a one-way going into Wyandotte, or is that a two-way?
It's one way from Wyandotte.
Okay.
And we're not proposing changing
All right,
that.
so I mean, if you, my thing is, if you put a light there and traffic coming up, if it's alternating with the other light on Wyandotte and Broadway, maybe you can get your left turn going into sheets. Follow what I'm saying?
Ms. Wells, has there been any location in the city where the proximity of the other light would be that close? Are there? Too close. Right. No, I certainly, Mr. Burgos, certainly, I respect your input there. That was the first thing that came to mind, the proximity of the other light. But Mr. Malozzi?
I say, with the volume of cars on Sheet Street, I don't think it would meet the warrants anywhere close to it, unfortunately. Good idea, but, right, Mr. Horner?
I would generally concur with what everyone has said. Combination of expense, maybe lack of warrants. Really if there were to be a light, it would almost be in the form of similar to what I was suggesting with the do not block the box and a sign, which only affects northbound. Doesn't affect anything southbound in terms of stopping that traffic. Really, a light could be almost like you see with a crosswalk where you have the enhanced lighting so people honor the sign. That would be, I think, the extent of any signalization there for northbound, but not a full traffic light. I don't think that would be approved.
Mr. Horner, Ms. Wells, is it safe to say that the highest traffic count is probably southbound on Wyandotte or northbound, anything on Wyandotte compared to Broadway? So is there a compromise with allowing, if I'm coming down Broadway from the heart on the south side, allow them to go left there at least to somewhat, because I've been on Broadway, I've been on Wyandotte. There's more cars on Wyandotte than there are on that part of Broadway coming up from the CVS and the Dunkin' Donuts, Fuel and Pepsi Sporting Goods, right?
Yep.
Granted, there is traffic, but as it stands now, you can't even turn left into AutoZone off of Broadway.
Correct.
Is the city opposed to that, Ms. Wells?
I honestly don't think we want to allow that left-hand movement either. I mean, from my perspective, this area and 378 is continuing to increase in traffic daily. With everything being built down Center Valley area, down that way, I think there's only going to be more traffic on Wyandotte.
On Wyandotte. On Wyandotte.
But also
And I will say this, I agree, and you're the expert at this, not me, but I will say this. When traffic does tend to back up on Broadway, it's probably right around that location of where they want to put it. So if the flow of the traffic is not as much coming from Broadway, Fountain Hill Broadway, their opportunity to turn left into AutoZone at that spot, it's probably better than Wyandotte. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm trying to give as many ideas out there as possible.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is if the city were to approach PennDOT and propose a peak hour, no left turn restriction sign, and we were part of that conversation and we could help justify that would be okay, I think that would be fine with us, and that would solve our problem, and it would mitigate quite a bit of the city's concern. I don't want to speak on behalf of the city, but it would go a long way to mitigate that concern, I would assume.
When the city applies, Ms. Wells, to PennDOT, is that how the application would be posed, or would it be posed no left at all at any time?
We were intending no left anytime. I'd really, yeah, we didn't think about the time. I don't right now for sure.
I'm hearing a time restriction compromise here. I'm hearing some acceptability from the applicant here. I'm hearing possibly the city requesting that.
Question.
Mr. Malozzi.
Thank you. So the city's letter as it stands right now, and the objection from the applicant to number 4 is to fund a study. So,
I mean, obviously the objection is to an outright no left turn as well.
Okay. So that what would make that acceptable? You'd be looking for some sort of statement by the city as far as what exactly their application to PennDOT would be.
That
And it would be
the
favorable.
city will approach PennDOT to address their concerns about lefts in and come up with alternatives to mitigate that concern with our involvement.
And your funding of it.
We wouldn't fund, we don't think any studies are warranted. And again, frankly, we don't think that any restriction is warranted. So I wouldn't want to spend money on a study that we don't think is necessary.
And in all due respect, Mr. Roundtree, I understand that, but I don't think everyone's in agreement with that. I think knowing and being a part of the city as all of us are, we're aware of that. And in all due respect, Mr. Horner has done his due diligence, but I would say, if anything, give another month here yet to explore some of those options and some of those possibilities and work with Ms. Wells and our traffic bureau to sit down and say, look, here's how we're going to approach PennDOT. Here's what we need to do. And again, whether or not who pays for it, funding, I don't know if that's the heart of the matter right now. The heart of the matter is, what do we need to do to make this right? And I don't know if that's something that can be answered tonight.
I don't think so.
I'll put it back to my team here. Is there anything else that
if I
anyone
may.
wants to add? Yes, Mr. Roger.
Another potential creative solution would be if I know we haven't given Ms. Wells significant time to consider the restrictions based on peak hour or hours. But if the condition were that that's what would be sought from PennDOT, then we'd be happy to provide whatever study is required for your HOP with our consultant, or be responsible for the cost of that study with some sort of cap. Obviously, you never want to enter into an agreement where, there's no cap on expenses and checks and balances. I would say if Ms. Wells suggested it would be under 10,000, I don't think that would be 100% AutoZone's responsibility. Maybe a third, maybe $3,000 cap.
And that would be assuming that it was submitted with the request that it be a time restricted left turn.
Well, I'm hearing the applicant would prefer if there is going to be an application of PennDOT, which I'm hearing, that it's posed in a way that it's a time restriction.
I think
right?
the only thing that wouldn't kill the viability of redevelopment of this corner is something other than
Would the city agree to that?
left turn.
And we were just coming up with some, we just thought of it tonight too. So it's not that we were trying to hide the ball from you. I mean, it's just in the spirit of cooperating, we're trying to come to some resolution here.
Is the month,
That doesn't work with our agreement of sale, unfortunately. So I'm stuck
There'd be some condition
trying to find a
that's,
compromise on this condition that will allow us to get approval.
so this can't wait, Ms. Hellerville June meeting, according to his timeline,
On that condition.
on that condition.
And everything else is a very clear will comply.
Any other comments or questions from the planning commission?
I think we're all sitting here thinking this through. I can tell you that I like this, the development, the proposal, the application from AutoZone. There's a lot of positives that go to the site. I think we demonstrated that last time they were in. The continued collaboration with the building has been excellent. I realize you weren't required to do that, but you did, which is excellent. I share some concerns about this, and I don't think personally I want to try to make some restriction on what the city can and cannot approach PennDOT about tonight. The timeframe is the unfortunate thing. Is if there needs to be a decision tonight.
So with respect, if I can offer maybe another, it's the night of potential compromise. The city at any time can approach PennDOT with whatever they want to approach them with without an applicant's consent. I don't see why that would even need to be in our letter. With that removed, we're simply talking about, we're left with a condition of contributing money toward a future study. And I suggested maybe capping that at 3,000 and we'd be minimal to that.
That doesn't sound like that would take off the table the city's, right or intent to approach PennDOT to restrict left turns.
Of course not. I
all
mean,
the
there's
time.
nothing that could happen this evening that would restrict their ability to do that.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Which
With
you know,
all due
puts
respect
you
to
at
the planning
risk.
commission, yeah.
puts you as the applicant of this site at risk.
However, if we are involved in the process as the city committed to having us involved, them as the applicant, but us as an interested party, we're highly confident we can come up with a solution that doesn't outright restrict left turns 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at that intersection. We're highly confident. We'd be willing to accept that risk. But having no left turn in this letter has teeth, because then there's a decision that references this, and then somebody can say, oh, no left turns. That's what we're doing. We want the ability to continue the dialogue, be part of the dialogue with PennDOT, and come up with a solution that satisfies everyone. And we think we can.
Ms. Danielson?
I think there's 3 people. I just want to make sure. I can't tell. Was there 3 people from the public?
I had asked earlier, does anyone from the public have any comment or questions, concerns? I do not see any. Rick, am I missing anything? No.
Something else then. Okay.
What was the reason again behind the box not being utilized?
Ms. Wells,
Wells.
PennDOT, yeah.
Yeah, when I approached PennDOT setting up a meeting, they didn't seem too thrilled at the time to have a meeting. They basically just said, well, the city can submit an application. And I then questioned, well, there was some other suggestions thrown out, like do not block the box. And the response I got from the signals group was that it was too close to the signalized intersection. They wouldn't allow it. I didn't further that then why, but they just said it was too close to the signalized intersection. I don't know if it's confusion of maybe you're not supposed to, I understand the box, what it's supposed to be, but that was their response.
So typically their concern is having it too close to the intersection and backing up into the intersection with that don't block the
Right.
box. So there may have been some confusion there. Part of the reason we'd like to remain involved is to bring clarity.
I would suggest the city allows the turns off of Broadway into AutoZone. That would be my suggestion. I understand the Wyandotte issue, believe me. I don't know if we're ever gonna have a win on that one, but I would, and I know it's not the best for Mr. Roundtree and his group, but at least there's some wiggle room there other than driving all the way around. At least if that person knows they're gonna go to the AutoZone at 5 points, hey, I can get in there. I'm gonna go up Broadway and turn left. Not the best scenario, but this is just my opinion. I'm not speaking for the group. My opinion, it's better to turn left into AutoZone there than at Wyandotte.
It doesn't really solve the issue of, because you can't make a left onto Broadway from Wyandotte, if they also can't make a left onto Sheets, that.
But certainly it's better to approach AutoZone from a different area.
If ultimately.
Because if I'm coming over, I can still get to that area of Broadway, right? And enter that way. Again, dialogue,
I appreciate it.
we're trying to compromise. here.
If there were no lefts into Sheets, which again, we strongly feel.
I understand that.
Around that.
Yep.
Then that would be a supplemental benefit. It would make it better than it would be otherwise. But I don't think that would substitute for what we're trying to do here. But I appreciate that.
The city's gonna apply, is basically where we're at, right? They're gonna apply. What is going to be asked or requested for in that application by the city is no left into Sheets. Hearing what you just heard, and I know they had mentioned this to you within the last however long it's been.
19 and a half minutes.
There you go. Would the city apply in that vein? Apply to PennDOT for restricting Sheets during peak hour only? I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess two things. Obviously, I haven't really had time to
Right.
think about this with the time restriction. I don't even know that PennDOT would allow that. I know they allow it for those right turns, at signals. I don't know about left turn restrictions. I haven't had any experience with that yet, so I don't even know for sure.
There's one on Linden Street by Taylor Court, 1/3 sushi restaurant. Peak hour, limit straight, no left turn, right only.
From a driveway, yeah.
I have it in my particular township as well.
It's a driveway.
There's a left.
Well, I'm-
Private driveway.
Or 3 to 6.
I'm saying Linden Street is pretty,
Coming out of the driveway.
I know there's 30 units there. I built them 30 units and there's a lot of, jeez, pardon me?
The sign is removed again.
Yeah, it's down again.
I sold it, so it's not mine.
Tell them, Tom.
But I sold it. So, but again, yeah, it was my project and there was restrictions that.
Yeah. Can we at least, in order to move forward this evening, modify the language that consideration will be given to alternatives such as peak hour restriction or other design alternatives? Because it's not really, again, it's not really I understand it's in your letter, but it's not.
And ultimately, it's going to be PennDOT's decision, obviously. So,
right.
I mean, they may decide that's not warranted at all.
It's not a condition. In other words, if the city decided not to pursue it, it wouldn't make our decision invalid.
And you were looking forward you were looking to be an active participant in discussions with PennDOT,
Yes,
but that's,
I think the city agreed to.
how does the city is agreeable to that? Is that part of the application process? Like, I know you submit an application.
Ms. Wells, give us the process when the city applies for something similar. Is there a meeting with PennDOT or is this PennDOT's decision and you get the letter from them saying, here's our decision?
Honestly, this would be the first for this type of situation, so this is very unique. I would hope that a meeting could be had, which I was trying with PennDOT to include the applicant, and they basically just said if the city wishes to apply, they may apply for it. So it didn't, and I didn't push as hard I could have for another meeting, but I think a meeting would be had first, and then I'm not sure what kind of paperwork would need to be filled out or what would need, I'm not even sure a study would be needed. I just wanted to throw that in there in case a study needed.
And if the applicant was going to be contributing towards the cost of the study, which he agreed to do up to a certain cap, then I think there would
Yeah, that's fine.
be involved with.
What I'm saying is, let's say PennDOT gets this application and says, no, you're not involved. That's not on us. That was their call, right? And that's what I don't want to see happen. And that's, quite honestly, it shouldn't be on us. That shouldn't be. And if PennDOT says that, it is what it is. Ms. Heller.
petition out. And then, the action is still the city. We, independent action that the city is taking. I guess if you took that out, it would leave them and there's no cost for a study. But, I mean, you can act on it without that.
So you're saying, Ms. Heller and Counselor, remove number 4 from the Public Works traffic comment, remove it entirely from the memo dated May 7th, 2021.
I'm not trying to tell you what to do.
No,
I'm
no,
just- You're struggling with how to move forward tonight, and I think there's like,
Right.
we work this or
Right.
whatever, but.
I'm saying what I'm saying so that they know, just because it is, and we're trying to help
No, I understand.
move, just because it is removed doesn't mean that, as you heard Ms. Heller and Ms. Wells,
I
they're
understand.
still going to probably follow through.
I understand. Yeah, it's clear. And it's clear they're welcoming our involvement. Our attendance at that meeting with PennDOT would be what I would expect to be our level of involvement, to be part of that dialogue, to come up with a creative solution. Even though they're not signing off at a meeting, they're understanding our logic, and then, would help educate us and DOT and the city on what.
Is that something, Ms. Wells, normally that PennDOT does allow? Them, yes.
Mhm.
And I think that's the best way to handle it. I think Ms. Heller's suggestion of doing that, and then obviously they're being upfront when they're going to follow through, and we put a cap on the dollar amount that the applicant will, that AutoZone will fund for this study, but more importantly, that they're involved in some of the, they're involved in the discussion with PennDOT.
The only comment I have is, since Ms. Wells and the department can't decide what position they want to take with respect to a design for traffic flow, that the city reserves, and the applicant specifically understands, the city reserves its right to determine what its position will be in the application. It will consider the input from the applicant, but there's no negotiation. Once the city makes its decision on what it's going to be, there's not going to be discretion reserved or given away, put it away. The city's not going to give up its discretion to make its recommendation in its application to PennDOT, what the city believes is a proper configuration for that intersection. I mean, you should be able to give input, but it's not like the city should be waiving its right to say, no, this is what the application is going to be. The main reason it has to be that way, in my opinion, is, first off, Ms. Wells hasn't really thought this out because it's only been presented here tonight. Second, she has people she works for that have more controlling determinations in a regional way in terms of her department. So her bosses will tell her, no, this is what we're going to do, as maybe part of a larger group. So you'll have maybe input, but ultimately it'll be up to the town, the city's sound discretion in
Of
terms
how
of the
to
content
apply, of how
what
to
the
apply.
application will be.
Right.
I think that's important.
There's also
And-
a consulting traffic engineer that we
Yes.
sometimes
Sure,
involve,
sure.
not even.
And so Mr. Roundtree, it may say on that application, our restrictions, it may not. That's going to be up to our city staff and Ms. Wells and her staff to, when that application's made. But certainly, they want you to be involved, and I'm hearing that some form of funding cap be placed as well. So as we act on this tonight, we should put that.
Yeah, somehow we condense that into a couple sentences.
And the meeting with PennDOT typically is a pre-application meeting,
Right.
so it wouldn't be determined till after the meeting with PennDOT.
Is it reasonable to memorialize that, as part of the condition, that it's kind of an opposite way, where we say the applicant will participate in a pre-application meeting with the department. And then at that point, the city makes up its mind what the application is going to look like. You've been a participant in the pre-app meeting.
Yes, that's good, that's good.
That's it.
Agreed to.
Yes.
Cities
Okay.
agreed to allow them.
Yes.
How would that, like I said, want to memorialize it, so as we're
Counselor.
listing conditions for a conditional approval, if that is the motion.
More
Yeah,
specifically
yeah,
on
I'm
that.
trying to.
Point out number 4 in the
We'd be,
memo and add those.
Would be requiring the applicant to participate in a pre-app meeting?
The city agrees to permit the applicant to participate in the pre-application meeting with PennDOT.
Yes.
I'm going to suggest this, and keep this in mind. As I said, it's evolving, okay? That the planning commission moves to approve this application subject to complying with the terms of the May 7 letter, except for Public Works traffic comment number 4. And in lieu of that, that the developer accept, the following condition, that the developer shall have the opportunity to provide input to both the city and PennDOT with respect to the traffic flow in and out of Sheets Street. But ultimately, the city shall have sole discretion to determine the content of its application to PennDOT for the traffic flow in and out of Sheets Street.
And can we just clarify that we could actually be in attendance at the pre-app meeting?
I think that's understood.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get
Okay.
to too.
I didn't know
That's
if
why I
you-
asked Miss,
Understood, but
I was asking Miss Wells, is that something that does take
I
place?
just want to
They're
make sure it wasn't us
physically there.
providing written input to them.
Yes, yes. Mr. Dorner.
That's our opinion. I mean, PennDOT says, no, we won't. But we would-
And I was also getting to that in my spiel earlier, is PennDOT just gonna say, no? Because then that's not our issue. That's,
does everybody understand the motion? Or does it have to be restated again?
yeah.
Yeah,
We'll submit the official motion later, with, again,
Confirmatory.
the fact that number 4 of the May 7th memo, is going to be handled in the way we agreed on here. Everything else, Mr. Roundtree, you're willing to comply with on this memo, correct?
Sounded fine.
Yes. So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Barker, any other discussion before we take roll? Rick, one last chance for anyone out there. Nothing.
Nope.
Mr. Roundtree,
It was silent to the contribution,
we are
which is also part of.
They were
comment 4.
proposing a cap of
$3,000.
$3,000.
3,000 was the cap. I believe Mr. Roundtree even went as far to say a third. And he came up with that amount because Ms. Wells had said 10,000. But the cap would
I
be
think 3,000.
3,000.
If that's in the motion, yes?
Yes, that is in the motion.
Is that part of the second?
Second, yep.
Mr. Barker, second. Yes, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll, please.
Mr. Burgos,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Malowski.
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Mr. Malozzi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Much appreciated, and believe, this is something that obviously, we want to see it done the right way. And it is, as Ms. Wells said multiple times, it is a unique site. But, Mr. Roundtree, appreciate your patience and your team's patience. I know you've been here multiple times, so thank you and best of luck moving forward.
All right,
Thank you, appreciate it.
Our last agenda item is a site plan, sketch plan review at 2958 and 2970 Linden Street. Will the representative please come forward? If you need any help with technology, Rick is here to assist. And when you are ready, please introduce yourself. And then you may begin.
That intersection. I could.
It's an improvement.
It is.
Improvement is there.
I guess
Go ahead,
that's a restaurant.
go ahead. This is just a sketch plan review.
Yeah, I know. I'm just in restaurant.
The one I needed you for was the last one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darby. Thank you. Hey.
They're gonna have to.
It was. That was one of the tougher ones since I've been.
Was paying me to approach.
Really?
If they allow them to put a line in there, I'm driving, I'm not gonna sit in my lane.
On the slide.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
But it's a liquor
Thank you.
store. Yeah, and nobody,
Thank you, sir.
okay, thanks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Same thing on the slide, but easier to look at.
We need task lighting in here.
Your phone, it's called your phone. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Rosario's second meeting, she is getting a thorough.
Indoctrination.
Wilma, I'm gonna, you're the best. You are the best.
Took a lot of brain power there.
Yeah. Nothing else will happen there.
I mean, the fact that. We love it.
Yes, yes. Whenever you're ready, sir, please introduce yourself and you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Dwayne Wagner. I'm here tonight on behalf of Setnam Enterprises, the applicant for the redevelopment of the property at 2970 Linden Street. I have a brief summary I can go through. My plan was to walk through a description of the property, description of development, and then also address some of the comments in the letter we received.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Thank you.
So thank you, Chairman and the Planning Commission for your time this evening. The property is located at 2970 Linden Street along the eastern side of Linden Street and south of the intersection with Makita Road in the city of Bethlehem. The site's currently used by Stefano's Restaurant. It's been there since 1984. And there's also a residential rental home located south of the Stefano's Restaurant property on the adjacent parcel. Site is located in the CS Shopping Center District Zone, and the existing restaurant is located toward the front of the parcel and is currently about 6.9 feet from the right-of-way line and about 3.2 feet from the northern property line. The restaurant parking is located at the rear of the parcel. The structure in the rear is used to the south end of the property, is used as a residential rental property and accesses the property along Linden Street. There is a narrow driveway between the gas station and I believe it's a beverage store. Now it used to be the 7-Eleven. The two properties are contiguous with each other to create one large parcel of about 2.8 acres. The property is surrounded by commercial and residential uses. The site slopes from south to north where runoff enters an existing swale along the adjoining property. The swale is used as a discharge point for the adjoining shopping center as well as the Linden Street PennDOT drainage system. The site has existing public sanitary sewer which connects to the existing sanitary sewer to the northeast corner of the property. So I have up slide number 1, and you'll see the property is located right by the red subject property marker in the center of the map. This is just a proximity to show access to Route 22 at various places as well as its proximity to downtown Bethlehem. If you'd like to go to slide 2, please, Rick. Thank you. This shows you an aerial photo of the two properties. There's two parcels that run basically just south of the parking lot at the north end of the property. On top of the page is where the properties connect. In the upper left corner is the existing Stefano's Restaurant with the pink tile roof, red tile roof. And then towards the bottom center of the property is the residential home. And then there's that narrow access point onto Linden Street. So if you go to the next slide, please. This just reiterates the existing condition. Again, the buildings in the upper left corner of the parcel, that's the existing restaurant. You see the parking spaces there running east to west, a little bit to the south, and then there's a paved drive aisle that goes and connects to the single-family residence that's there now. You go to the next slide, please. This shows the proposed development. The project proposes to redevelop the site with a new 2,400 approximate square foot residential, commercial restaurant pad, along with the 61 unit apartment building. The proposed redevelopment allows for full circulation around the building and allows the apartment building to be set back farther from the adjacent residentially zoned properties. We have applied to the zoning hearing board to address zoning relief for the proposed redevelopment. The restaurant will be reconstructed so it's set back slightly further than what's there now, but it'll maintain its location along Linden Street, which is consistent with all the other commercial buildings along the street at that point. The access is proposed to be upgraded to meet PennDOT standards, but with the same general location as the current Stefano's restaurant entrance is. The project's had some initial coordination with PennDOT and the city as part of PennDOT's scoping process in anticipation of preparation and submission of HOP plans. The project also proposes buffering along the sides of the property. There are several mature trees on the property that, if removed, will either be replaced or satisfied via payment of the city's fee in lieu of. A landscaping plan has not been prepared yet. However, we anticipate that with the combination of the replanted trees and fee in lieu, it will provide for a healthy and vibrant landscape package. The landscape plan will be coordinated with the city forester and other city staff members as required. Water and sewer will connect to the public systems and anticipates the use of existing available infrastructure. Sanitary will connect to the existing sewer located on the property, and water will connect to the water main on existing water main on Linden Street. The project will need water and sewer approval from the city and DEP. Stormwater management is anticipated to be collected and the rate, volume, and water quality treated in accordance with city and DEP requirements. So we're maintaining the entry point at the existing location. That will be upgraded and widened to provide better traffic flow in and out of the property. We're proposing that this entry between the two buildings to the south, the narrow access, would be retained for an emergency access point. It would be paved to allow easy access if emergency vehicles need to get into the site. So this is the general flow of the property coming around. The parking circulates in both directions around the building. Down here we have the location for the trash receptacle dumpster area. Just lost my light. For the trash dumpster area, and this is necessitated for the trash refuse trucks to pull straight in, take care of the dumpster manipulation they need to do there. Then they back up and pull out of the site. But they need it straight on rather than trying to put it somewhere in the middle of the drive aisles. So that's basically what we're dealing with here. You've got the new pad here, parking for the restaurant up in this area, and then the parking for the planned apartments around the building.
Mr. Wagner, the road that is, I believe, next to the beverage center, that's not paved now, is it?
I believe it's paved, but it's in poor condition.
It
could appear to be large chunks of
Yeah,
gravel.
exactly, yeah. So the plan is to repave it
Yes, sir. Yeah.
and only used by emergency vehicles.
And that
if
would be
needed,
gated,
right?
so there's no
Right.
public regular access there. It would be reserved for emergency vehicle access. And we've had preliminary scoping review with PennDOT. They don't have any requirement for an improvement to the signalized interchange, no road widening required or anything like that. We would just have to make sure that when we widen the entrance that we do it in compliance with city as well as PennDOT guidelines.
I notice, and it ties in with what I had just asked, emergency vehicles. Some of the comments under the fire.
Yeah, I can run through those if you'd like, or if you'd like to ask, however you'd prefer to do it. I know you guys have been here a long time tonight, so if you want to fire some questions or run through.
Yeah, if anyone else has, I usually just like to ask questions on what I have. Certainly, I'm not gonna, I mean, we all can read this. If any of the other planning commission members have questions as well, but I don't feel it's necessary to go through them all in sketch plan review. My question was, it does mention here about contacting the fire department in reference to those fire lanes, emergency entrance that I pointed out. Has that taken place since the May 7th memo was given to you? Is that something that is an issue?
It is, I don't believe it's an issue. I did speak to Fire Marshal Craig Bear. He said the fire department approved the plan as it is submitted. I did review the comments that were in the comment letter with the fire marshal. Specifically, he agreed that if there's a need for wider aisles to provide proper turning radius throughout the site, that he would support that. I understand the comment letter indicates that our aisles are 28 and 30 feet. That's based upon the turning template we did to get around the building in these areas down here. You can drive, obviously you could drive down a 20-foot wide road with the truck, but when you get to these turns coming in through here and coming out here, and also up in this area and this area is where the throats need to widen. And rather than have a wider entry and then narrow down the drive aisle and then open it back up, we're keeping it consistent for safety and consistency throughout the site.
What is the width of because I frequent Stefano's for a good pizza now and then.
Here?
Yeah, what is that width now?
16 feet.
And it's going to be
24.
Yeah, because it is tight there.
Right.
It is
That'll
tight
be
there.
widened to 24. And then these are the areas, I believe, that the letter referred to, are the drive aisles here going north to south on both sides of the building. Those are wider than is required by the ordinance. However, again, based on the engineering and the turning radius, that's why we're making them wider. It's just the way it works. And I did, in speaking with Fire Marshal Bear, I said I would meet with him to review that, to explain that. I also walked through the two scenarios we were looking at, are multiple buildings or one building. Our preference, and we believe it's prudent design for the single building, is with multiple buildings, the buildings get pushed from the center of the lot to the east and end up being along the adjoining property lines on the east and the south. When we do that, you're now limiting the accessibility for emergency vehicles on all four sides of the building. You're able to access two of the sides easily from the parking areas and the paving, but the other two are against these property lines and just where they line up. This area, this location allows full access to the building. And there's a comment in reference to the southern leg not being required. And again, in reviewing that with Fire Marshal Bear, if that leg is removed, then any truck or emergency equipment coming down would be forced to reverse and back out along this whole part of the building.
So is it safe to say, as was mentioned in the general comments, and you had just pointed out about originally two buildings, that after reviewing the plan, you had mentioned he spoke to Fire Marshal Bear, that he felt the one building scenario allowed for a better flow for emergency vehicles, fire.
Yes, the single building layout with the access around the building. And also, when we looked at other versions of the multiple building scenario, you end up with a larger parking field that's sort of in the middle of the lot. And the way it's configured, it's a little more confusing to navigate. It requires, there ends up with a lot more dead end situations where people are backing up to pull out, and it ends up being, I believe, from a development standpoint, a more confusing parking configuration. I think it's also a more dangerous situation for pedestrians walking to and from their cars or walking out to Linden Street to go to the various restaurants and stores. And it also provides a more challenging accessibility option for the emergency vehicles. But this was, as Fire Marshal Bear said, this was approved by the fire department as submitted.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Wagner? So the restaurant is still going to be in place by the owner, is that?
Yeah, that's the plan. We're looking at the existing restaurant would be demolished and all the improvements here would be rebuilt to provide for the revised parking layout as well as the smaller building and pad area here. But it would be maintained by Mr. Lombardo as a family business.
Good, good.
Which we think is a great amenity for the
Absolutely,
apartments
yeah.
as well.
Any questions for Mr. Wagner on this sketch plan review? Again, Ms. Heller, Ms. Samuelson, we're just providing input on this if we feel anything needs to be added, what have you, right? Not acting on it, right? Any comments?
I do.
Ms. Cohen?
Thank you. Well, my first question is, one of the general comments was providing elevation drawings of the exterior of the building. I assume in the future submission, you would include those?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have not prepared elevations at this point because our next step in the process is to proceed to zoning. Once the zoning determination is issued, we'll finalize our elevations based upon that, but we didn't want to invest the time or dollars into a elevation that may not exist if we aren't successful in our zoning relief. But we will provide a full elevation package for the formal land development submission to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. And in my opinion, the straight rectangular shape of the building, although you're talked about having two buildings versus one building, the straight long rectangle building, without knowing what's going on in the elevations, can be very monolithic.
Yeah.
And so any design of the elevations, we would be interested in having some character or modulation of parts of the elevation to break up that long monolithic look.
We agree 100%. And the elevations and the concepts we've looked at without formalizing anything for presentation yet do have setbacks relief and it provides some modulation as you suggest along the elevations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen. Any other comments or questions for Mr. Wagner?
What's the proposed height of the building?
It's 4 stories plus a pitched roof. I don't have the exact height. I think it's actually 56.
Actually, I see.
It's 56. It was a typo for 50.
Okay.
That was just a typo, not or drafting error. I don't want to call it a typo. Drafting error that'll be corrected.
So that would be, it'll be visible even behind the gas station from Linden Street and potentially from the residences to the east?
I believe it would. And again, our thought was with the multiple buildings, there would be three to 4 stories, depending on how it works out, but it would be a minimum of 3-story building that would be right up against the property line or as close to the setback as possible to allow for the parking configuration to take place. We did also consider breaking this up into 2 buildings on that pad. Basically, the outline there is an outline of the building area, but it's not a true footprint where you would see the setbacks or the adjustments to the elevation. But we did look at breaking that into two buildings separately, and the challenge with that is there's a building separation that comes into play, and in order to maintain the same density that's permitted on the site, we would have to go higher. So we looked at 2 buildings going up to 5 or 6 stories, which we think is not as attractive as a 4-story building that I think will have a nice elevation and will eventually blend into what's there in the community.
I think that's knowing that the purpose of tonight's review is a sketch or site plan review is to look at neighborhood compatibility issues, vehicular and pedestrian circulation and buffers and such. I would say, it looks like it's by right zoning. The variances you need, it seems, are mostly dimensional, if not all dimensional. So it's very dense. It will be visible at 56 feet tall. So I would echo Ms. Cohen's comment that the way it looks will be significant. Right now, you can't really see anything back from that. I cruised it myself. It's mature trees and you can't really see anything behind the gas station. This will be very visible. And I know that the word monolithic was used in the letter itself. It could very easily be that way. So I think attention to the detail on the exterior for the benefit, maybe not so much the benefit of the customers at the gas station, but the people who live to the east that back up close to the property line, and even also the people patronizing the new incarnation of Stefano's to have an attractive residential development back there. As you develop your plans and you're looking for comments, I would suggest that.
Thank you. And we will definitely take that into consideration for the residents who we want to attract to the building. So it's important all around. I agree with you. It has to look good for everyone.
Thank you.
Anyone online wishing to make any comment as pertains to this sketch plan review? Seeing none. Anything else from the city?
One
Ms.
or
Samuels?
two comments, yeah, just
Yes.
one or two. Yeah, we recognize the by right nature of it. I know that you said you had a conversation with Craig Bear. I also did. This is very preliminary right now as a sketch, but we want to see those turning movements. And I had asked him, because the typical widths of these lanes are like 26 feet max, so that the pull downs can be put with a fire truck. So I'm not sure why you need these excessive widths. So I'm just, and it would be less costly to have less width. So the turning movements provided will be very important for Tiffany Wells, for traffic, as well as Craig and our department. So I want to see what that is before it's too finalized, because
Absolutely.
I don't believe excessive widths are necessary, but we'll see,
We'll
I
show you,
didn't see the turning movements
if
yet.
we can build less, we'd certainly prefer to build
Yeah,
less.
because that was the first thing that jumped out.
But the first thing we did was our engineer did lay that out to determine that the plan worked as we're proposing it versus having to come back and change it later, end up
Yeah.
with an issue. So, but
Well, we
we'll
want to see
be
that,
happy
yeah,
to
early
review that.
on, yeah. Mhm. Secondly, you made some comment, we do have this tree conservation ordinance in our zoning, part in our zoning ordinance. So we are interested in that. We usually have a site meeting with you folks, and you indicate what trees are to be removed. It's not automatic that we just pay money. So it would be good to see what can be preserved. And that would help you anyway with your, at the border to the neighboring properties, so that was one thing. And Owlwoods trees and I think that, no, and the elevations, and you said 3 or 4 stories, so we'll see. And I didn't know if you were going to have any, if you even knew if you were going to have any kind of decks or not decks, little porches or anything like that on.
Yeah, the plan would be that there would be some balconies that will provide some visual interest, as well as multiple setbacks along the length of the building. But I think everybody will be very happy once we get a concept down. We'll be happy to share it with you. But like I said, right now it was too early with the zoning relief that's required to present a plan that may or may not come to fruition.
Fair enough. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner, I hope this provided you some feedback from us. I appreciate you taking the time, and I know you've been here a while. It was a lengthy meeting, and we look forward to this process continuing. Kudos to you and your group developing this. You're following the process the right way, so we appreciate you taking the time and look forward to meeting with you again.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Ms. Heller.
I know you don't like take action, but it is helpful if you make a motion to just indicate for the record whether or not you support the comments that are in the letter. You could do that, that gets forwarded to some people.
Understood.
If I could interject on that, it would, if it recognize support of the plan and the comments, that would help us, just so zoning, as you said, so zoning knows we're not going in there with something the planning has not seen.
What zoning relief do they need? I didn't see that.
And what is relief they need again? Zoning?
Building height,
Building height,
some setbacks.
the setbacks?
I don't know.
It's setbacks, and it's also an interpretation or variance on the use, because the zone requires that for multifamily, there's a first floor commercial use. Due to the irregular shape of the lot, we're requesting an interpretation or the alternative of variance that would allow the apartment building to not have a first floor commercial use. However, we are retaining the existing commercial use out on Linden Street, consistent with the commercial corridor and uses that are there.
main drag, we want to show on it.
It's not really fronting on, yeah.
There's no. That's
L shaped. It's not like the CL zone and the IR where you give recommendation to the zoning board, you know. A little different.
I would then make a motion to be passed along since this will be in front of the zoning hearing. I support the sketch plan, the plan for the redevelopment of this site as posed and presented by Mr. Wagner. And would support the zoning relief that Mr. Wagner and his group are requesting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Barker, roll please.
Mr. Malowski?
Yes.
Mr. Barker?
Yes.
Mr. Mallozy?
Yes.
Mr. Burgos?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Ms. Heller, anything else to add, discussion items? I see we had a pretty large summary of things that, some of which were on here. Is there anything you need to cover from the upcoming chart?
No, I think that probably for next month, the project on, I think Tracy's indicated you'll see the project on City Line Road. Other than that, I'm not really certain what the June agenda will hold. You may see some additional blighted properties. But at this point, nothing else is really confirmed.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Heller. Thank you, everyone, for joining our meeting, and at this time, we will adjourn. Thank you. Good night. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Mr. Mallozy. Thank you. Good night.
You should, yeah.